Breaking today, Matt Gaetz, President-elect Trump's nominee for Attorney General, has withdrawn his name from consideration for the job. In a post on X this afternoon, Gaetz said his nomination had become a distraction to the work of the Trump transition. Gaetz was embroiled in scandal amid an investigation into sexual misconduct allegations. The House Ethics Committee voted yesterday against releasing its report on the investigation. Gaetz has denied the allegations, but many of the accusations against the former congressman have been spilling out into public view. Now, President-elect Trump is left with a vacancy at a key spot in his cabinet. Joining me now is the Hill's White House correspondent, Alex Gangitano, with more reaction to Gaetz' announcement. Alex, Gaetz had been meeting with senators on Capitol Hill yesterday with Vice President-elect J.D. Vance. Things seem to be going good from what was said in public. Are we to assume that behind the scenes they weren't actually going as smoothly as we were led to believe?
I think that's right. We were hearing from a lot of Republican senators saying we're going to fall in line. We support what the president-elect wants. We'll see how this plays out. But behind the scenes, I mean, things got kind of heated in that House Ethics Committee meeting and the aftermath, with Democrats saying this report needs to be released. We're upset that that was a split vote, a decision that then decided not to release it. That was going to come out on December 5th. Who knows if this is also an attempt to not have all of this come out. If he goes through a confirmation hearing, more information could be, unveiled about some of his personal misconduct, and does he want to avoid that once he saw how hungry some Democrats were for more information about him. But after the meetings yesterday with Republicans, it did seem like a lot of them were ready to give him the benefit of the doubt, we should say. And so this is definitely a big development, 24 hours later.
Yeah, you talk about this ethics committee report. They voted yesterday not to release it for now. They were going to meet again in December, but the New York Times had a report that detailed some of the payments that were going back and forth between Gaetz and his friends and these women. It was pretty clear that the information would be trickling out, and I wonder if the notion that there would be this slow trickle out of this damaging information over the next few weeks was what ultimately sank his candidacy.
I think so. I mean, anyone who puts themselves in a spotlight, we remember Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. He had to be dragged through, or was dragged through a hearing, and a lot of his personal life was put under a microscope. It's a lot, and if you are guilty or not guilty, whatever the senators decide in those hearings, you have to figure out if you want to put yourself through that. And I think that might be part of the reason why Gaetz, what else is there about him, or what is true about him that he didn't want out in the public view. At the same time, he has shaped this as this was a distraction for the Trump transition. He's obviously one of Trump's most loyal backers, been an ally to the president for a long time. So does he also want to just not be kind of a stain on the reputation of this Trump transition? And what kind of behind the scenes jockeying was there that led to him to then drop out today?
This isn't exactly what you would call a smooth start, at least on this front for the Trump administration. We were told that he knows what he's doing this time. He's been in Washington. He's going to come back. He's going to get the people that he wants and kind of have a better idea of how Washington works. I don't know. Is this a kink in that armor?
I think the kink originally was Matt Gaetz being picked for Attorney General because, we all knew that there was a personal issue background.
He knew that too, though.
He knew that when he was named, he had already been under ethics investigations. I think originally when Trump was naming people like Senator Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, it did feel like kind of a new leaf, or things were, looking smooth. There were some really qualified people, and then a Matt Gaetz or, an RFK Jr. for HHS. Things have now become a little more complicated in terms of is this a new Trump 2.0, or is this a Trump is giving major roles to people that have been really loyal to him?
Does this lead to a domino effect? It's like, if it's not Gaetz, who is it? Because there is this notion that some of the people that were also in consideration for that job have already been offered other jobs in the cabinet or administration.
That's right. Like Whitaker was named NATO ambassador just yesterday, and that was one of the top options. I do look at this as it's possible that then whoever is named next is just a better option, just because Gaetz was such a poor option in terms of his issues personally, and so maybe senators will just be happy to see a new name. But it is interesting that a lot of who, weeks ago we were looking at as Attorney General options have been now moved into other spots.
Let's move along and talk about Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. They're out with an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal today detailing their plans for the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE as they're calling it. They're going to lead this department. They say they're going to identify thousands of regulations for President Trump to eliminate and implement large-scale reductions of the federal workforce, circumventing civil service protections. Unions are already gearing up for a fight, lining up lawyers and preparing public advocacy campaigns. I guess my first question is, how excited are you for the Doge podcast?
I'll have to tune in now. I guess that's part of my job. But it was definitely an interesting op-ed how they're laying out here that basically they're correlating like eliminating regulations with then that means we can eliminate people because there won't be as much regulations to implement, and so you don't need as many bodies in the federal government. And so what you mentioned, how they're kind of circumventing some laws there that protect civil servants, is it does a mass layoff, so to speak, not go under the category of this is us politically persecuting people that might not agree with the Trump administration. So there's a lot of loopholes, it seems like, that they're going through here. But it is notable that this government efficiency group with Musk and Ramaswamy is not part of the government. And so it basically is just telling Trump, here's our advice on what to do about government efficiency. But Trump will, it seems like at this point, take that advice, considering his really close relationship with Musk, who is a staple of Mar-a-Lago at this point. We saw him at the SpaceX launch, the former president, and so they're together nonstop. And so it seems like their relationship's just getting closer.
Close relationship for now. We'll see how long that lasts, I wonder. But, people might not realize this, but the federal government is the nation's largest employer, 2.2 million civil federal employees, and nearly 30% of them are veterans. A lot of people might think that's strictly, a lot of those jobs are around D.C., but really they're all over the country in many red states. I'm wondering if there's going to end up being pushback from Republicans when they start saying, let's slash these workers and eliminate these programs.
Right. One of the obstacles I think that this could get is from Congress. And like you said, when it actually comes down to, it sounds like a nice idea of we're saving the government money, maybe we could spend it elsewhere. But when it's your district and a veteran in your district possibly losing a job, are you a member of Congress who's going to say, wait, this has gone too far? And so when it becomes personal to some of these members, Congress does have the power to stop and to prevent some of these cuts that they'll likely put up. So I do think when it becomes personal to some of these Republican members, they won't be as supportive of this kind of a program.
They're not the first ones to go on this crusade of cutting waste, fraud, and abuse in Washington. We'll see what happens with that. I want to talk about Nikki Haley. She had some interesting comments about Tulsi Gabbard, who's Trump's pick for the Director of National Intelligence. Haley said of Gabbard that she is a Russian, Iranian, Syrian, and Chinese sympathizer. Those are pretty harsh words. I wonder, in light of what happened to Gaetz, I think maybe Gabbard's now the most controversial pick. Is there sentiment in the Republican Party, maybe among some foreign policy hawks like Haley, that because of the past things she's said and done, she is also not fit for office?
Yeah, Nikki Haley's words, I think, carry a lot of weight there. She's someone who's well respected in the defense hawk space, especially with the, anti-China agenda. I think she's been a strong, and we saw her when she was running for president, who was strong on those issues, and I think other Republicans really respect her. So her wanting to come out and say these negative things about Tulsi Gabbard, I think, is pretty notable, and I do think other Republicans could be now looking at Gabbard. Was this just another pick like Gaetz of you're trying to do somebody a favor who's been supportive of you, but what are her qualifications for this? And if anything, what is, in a situation like this, are there things that make her not only not qualified, but not, that could
I don't know, a threat to national
yes.
security.
be a disqualifying
what some people
pick
would
for
say.
the role.
Yeah, and I wonder, with Gaetz out of the way now, there maybe will be a lot more focus on her as like kind of the next most controversial pick. She also had some interesting words about RFK Jr., who's been picked to as another cabinet post in the Trump administration. He's a liberal Democrat, environmental attorney, trial lawyer who will now be overseeing 25% of our federal budget and has no background in healthcare. He's the nominee for HHS. What do you make of those comments, and is that a sentiment that we also are going to hear? There's several doctors, Republican doctors in the Senate, and I wonder how they feel about his nomination.
Right, somebody like that, if he has any qualifications to be running health agencies, whereas he's not a doctor, he was an environmentalist for a long time. So to her point, though, what's interesting is she's also calling him liberal and a Democrat. Then we're also hearing from anti-abortion groups who don't like him running HHS because he is more liberal on issues like abortion. So if he's painted, from multiple parts of conservative groups as a liberal, I think that's a big problem to some people, regardless of if he's qualified for this. Is he going to put up an agenda that doesn't take into account conservative values that they're looking for in a Trump administration?
Let's round out the controversial cabinet picks. Pete Hegseth for Defense Secretary. He's back in the spotlight. There's a police report, 22-page report that was released detailing this incident that allegedly happened in 2017. It involves alleged sexual assault on the part of Hegseth. It's a he said, she said situation, alcohol involved. I wonder how Capitol Hill is reacting to those allegations, and for me, this really reminds me of a Kavanaugh situation that could be ugly on Capitol Hill.
That's right. Something like that can get very ugly, as we've seen just recently, or it felt recently. But I think we know he's up on Capitol Hill too with Vice President-elect Vance doing the rounds, trying to talk to lawmakers. But actually, this Gaetz news kind of, I think, will overshadow a lot of these allegations that have come out now. I think once the dust settles on that, then he might be the next focus. Between him and Gabbard, I'm not sure who will be the next most controversial pick, but it could be him that senators look at. Okay, we dodged this Gaetz having hearings that turn into a circus. Why don't we try to avoid another one and put some pressure on him to step aside as well, just because a lot of these allegations, like you said, are looking like a Kavanaugh hearing, which I think a lot of them were part of those hearings, and I think they don't want to have to relive that again.
It's not necessarily just the allegations, also the question of whether or not he's qualified to lead such a big and important department. Alex Gangitano, White House correspondent at The Hill, thanks so much for coming on. As he continues to build his administration, President-elect Trump is now considering the idea of creating the first ever crypto-czar role in the White House. News Nation's Robert Sherman has the latest.
We are really entering uncharted waters at this point, with Bloomberg reporting that there are discussions taking place within the Trump transition team about the possibility of some kind of crypto-czar position being a part of this new administration. Very early discussions as to exactly what this would look like, and there are conversations about whether this would be a specific White House administrative role or more of a czar position, someone who'd be more of a point person on this particular subject matter. But something that is clear is that the president-elect has spoken at length about the issues of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin on the campaign trail, speaking positively about them. In fact, this is what he had to say at a Bitcoin conference in Nashville this summer. Take a listen.
If I am elected, it will be the policy of my administration, United States of America, to keep 100% of all the Bitcoin the U.S. government currently holds or acquires into the future. We'll keep 100%. I hope you do well, please. This will serve in effect as the core of the strategic national Bitcoin stockpile.
And don't look now, but the price of Bitcoin surging in the last month, particularly ever since the election, as investors remain bullish that this particular incoming administration will be friendly and supportive of both Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Drew?
Thank you, Robert Sherman. The Federal Communications Commission says it received 70 violation complaints from across the country after Vice President Harris appeared on Saturday Night Live just days before the presidential election. Most of the complaints that were filed accused the vice president's cameo of violating the agency's equal time rule, which states that rival candidates are allowed to request equal airtime. After the SNL sketch aired, the FCC was flooded with complaints condemning NBC and even some calling for the commission to revoke NBC's broadcast license. Senior Republican FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr also spoke out, calling it a clear and blatant violation of the rule. The day after her appearance, NBC aired a short video message from Trump near the end of a Sunday night NASCAR playoff race in an apparent attempt to give him equal time. None of the FCC complaints referenced that video message, despite some being filed after it aired. Meantime, Trump tapped Brendan Carr earlier this week to chair the commission in his next administration. The Department of Justice is asking a federal judge to force Google to sell its popular web browser Chrome after the court found Google maintained an illegal monopoly over online searching. The DOJ argued in a filing Wednesday that the tech giant's control of Chrome and Android stand in the way of efforts to open up the market and prevent future monopolies. The Justice Department's proposal would require Google to divest from Chrome and prohibit it from owning another browser for 5 years. It would also block the company from owning or investing in other potential rivals over the same period. The Justice Department also took aim at exclusive agreements that Google has with partners like Apple, argued that the company should be barred from preferencing its search engine through its other products like YouTube and its AI chatbot Gemini, and indicated that prosecutors may ask Google to divest from Android in the future. Google's chief legal officer called the DOJ's recommendation a, quote, staggering proposal and said it goes miles beyond the court's decision. That's today's Daily Debrief. I'm Drew Petrimoulx. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hill's YouTube channel, and come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.